Hey everyone, welcome back to the Contractor Growth Network podcast. I'm Logan Shinholser, and today we're talking about a not so sexy topic of customer lifetime value, but it is so important to the business, and I have the perfect person to talk about this thing as a guest. It's somebody near and dear to my heart. It's my dad, Steve Shinholser, because he is such an amazing way at taking very complex, sometimes boring things in business and making it very simple. And this conversation is taking this super important topic of lifetime value and breaking it down into things that you can actually implement in your business. So without further ado, let's jump into the podcast. So yeah, whether you know it or not, you are fantastic at this exact thing. So I'm excited for you to join.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and everything we're about to talk about, you said I like to make things easy. That's exactly right. I designed and built all these companies so they would just reoccur and be easy.
So give us the backstory on those two companies first, and then we'll jump into all the nerdy stuff.
Okay. The first thing out of college, I started a lifeguard business. As you know, like you, I was a diver and I was a lifeguard my whole life, and that's how I supported myself. So I figured I wanted to have my own business, and that was it. And basically, we went from zero to managing 500 swimming pools with 3,000 teenage lifeguards as our workforce. And that was a very difficult thing to do. However, it made a shit ton of money. So that part of it was really good. You had to give your life up in exchange for all that money, but that was really good. And then I sold that one. I had a few other ventures. I had a hair salon one time, and then I opened up a pond company, and I ran that for 20 years out of my garage, at the home that you lived up in. And you saw that you were there day one, helping me name it and pick out the logo and the whole thing. And I don't know if you remember us tearing up the cards, the business cards. We were making them up, printing them out, and tore them up in little sections, and that was that. And then I ended up selling that. And I learned from my first business what I needed to do in my second business to sell it at the end. I didn't just want to walk away like most contractors, and I didn't own a fancy building or anything, so I needed to monetize all my hard work. So I set it up to sell, and we can go into that later. But this lifetime customer topic was really the focal point of the entire pond business. And that, therefore, at the end, I had something actually to sell.
So I guess let's just go with just the overall high-level customer lifetime value. It's a marketing term, but what does that mean to you in layman's terms?
For me, it's hard. It's really hard to get a customer. But once you get them, it's easier to keep them than go get a new one. So I thought, how do I keep them? And really, I know from being a consumer like you just bought a house. I just bought a house. We have all these contractors coming in, and I know how I want to be treated. And if I'm treated that way, I'm going to hire them for more work, and not only in their field, but sometimes I'm like, do you know how to fix cars? Because I like you so much. I want you because you're nice. It's not a pain in the ass. So I flipped it around and got, okay, how can I be that go-to person for them? And so when they call me up, I just jump. They say, how high? And I just did it. And I just tried to be the best. I gave them what I wanted. That's all I did.
So I guess in your mind, you're a bit unique where the stuff, if you're buying something expensive, which is most people listen to this provide an expensive service, you were able, at least in the latter half of life, you were able to buy your own services without, having to think twice, if you will. A lot of people
Correct.
Can't. So I guess before you were able to afford your own stuff, how would you be able to empathize with what the consumer actually wanted?
Well, that would have had been way back in the swimming pool business, because it didn't take me long, probably 3-4 years before I was making crazy good money. And so I literally could afford anything my customers could afford and more. You buy like you sell is a phrase. So meaning if you're a Walmart shopper, but yet the business you own is a Nordstrom's kind of a business. The two just really don't go well together. So up until about year 4 or 5, I had to fake it, just running around trying to get these swimming pool contracts. And, I couldn't afford a $60,000 swimming pool contract back then, or $100,000 swimming pool renovation back then. But I was a service. I didn't know any better. I just ran around and worked my ass off. It was one of these jobs, you know the deal, like literally 80 hours a week kind of thing. You live it. Even when you go home, you live it. But you're right. There is a point where once you start to make it, I used to go to the swimming pool days. I mean, the pond days. I always had a few $1,000,000 in the bank because I sold my first company. And I remember knocking on the doors of these wealthy people in wealthy neighborhoods, and they would open them up, and they would kind of have an attitude that because they had more money than me, they were better than me. And that would have scared me in my first 5 years of business in the swimming pool world. But by the time I got to the pond world, I realized chances are I had more money than them. And then when I would go in their houses, and they'd be beautiful houses on the outside, but the living room would be empty on the inside, then I realized just because someone has more money than you doesn't make them a better person. And it was literally something I had to think about and get over, because contractors who are struggling go and they just start kowtowing and jumping through these hoops unnecessarily, so because they feel like these people have a higher status in the planet than they do because they're richer. And that's bullshit.
So, I mean, okay, so with that, when you're first getting into the pool business, you can't afford this stuff, but you're like on one side of the aisle, I'm doing whatever they asked me to do. But now on the flip side, now that you learn that maybe not everybody, like everybody's like kind of essentially like on an equal playing field when it comes down to like in your casket, like maybe somebody's casket is going to look nicer than yours, but when you leave this planet, everybody's pretty much back to the same square one place. How would you get over all that though in the first 3 or 4 years of the pool business? Like when you say like you would just do whatever, like what was that?
Well, that was, first off, the swimming pool world was all commercial. The pond world was residential, homeowners. Swimming pool world was apartments and country clubs and condos and community pools. So normally what happens is a property management company would maybe own and operate, or at least operate 25 or 30 or 40 or 50 different apartment buildings. So we would go around to, they had the Property Managers Association called the PMA. They would have dinners. I would buy a whole table, and I would call up different property managers, and it was basically $100 a plate, and they would get free dinner. They had to go to the meetings anyways, so they could either pay for themselves or sit at a free seat. So I would buy a whole table, 12 people, 10 people, 8 people, whatever it was, and 7 of them would be my guests at the table. And I remember I would have to put a coat and tie on, and I was not a coat and tie guy, but I would sit down and play the game, coat and tie, and just be nice to them all. I treated them all to dinner. I treated them to drinks. We would go to the bar afterwards. I would treat them all to drinks and just schmooze and just be nice. And eventually, 1 or 2 of them gave me a contract, and they give you one pool. They might operate 25 pools, 25 apartment buildings, let's say. They give you one because they want to test you out. And that's the one I know I had to shine. And I just bent over backwards to prove to them that I could run that pool better than whoever was running the other 24. And then the next year would come around and they go, you did great. I had some blow ups at these 5 other pools. So now I'm going to give you 5 more pools, these fuck ups that somebody else messed up. And so now I'd be managing 6 pools for them. Well, I was doing this times 10 or 15 or 20 different management companies. I would invite a different management company at the same table with me. Or if they had expos, we would go to the Capitol Centers where the Caps used to play hockey and the Bullets, back when they were called the Bullets, and the entire circumference of the arena would be nothing but vendors who were just catering, just like a home show, but we would cater to commercial property management. So the condo people would be there, the country club people would be there, all the property managers would be there. And we would have, in every booth, like one year, our gimmick, we had all kinds of giveaways, but our gimmick one year was I hired a masseuse and a chair, just like at the airport. And this was before the airports were doing it. And so when you came by my booth, you could just step back inside the booth and you get a 10-minute rub down by this very attractive girl. It didn't matter that she was attractive, but that she just happened to be. And that was different than what everybody else was doing. And so same thing. We'd give them all our tchotchkes, their American Pool Service pens and rulers and whatever else we had. But mostly we're just trying to make a good impression, let these people know we are here. And you know what? 4 or 5 of these property management dudes would get up from a 15-minute amazing massage like in a daze, and when they're in a daze like that, they remember you. They remember that experience because they'll walk out of that building and go, I just saw 125 booths, but I only remember one because I had that amazing massage in that one booth. So they'd give me a pool to try. And then the same thing would happen all over again. And the next year I'd have 5 pools and then they'd give me 10. And then sometimes these companies, they would give me all their stuff. Like, Steve, you got all 20. You got all my stuff. I don't want anybody else. But it was a stepping stone, You just got to get a foot in the door. And that's how we got that foot in the door.
And with that, so it sounds like you would spend big up front to get them in the, go into a trade show, getting a booth there costs money. Hiring a massage therapist costs money. Going and getting these dinners and drinks, that all costs money, especially in the early days when, maybe now it's different when you have a whole marketing budget for the company. But when you're first starting out, what made you guys want to put the money up front and say, screw it, let's make this thing happen versus what I think a lot of people inherently do, which is, well, I can't spend any money until I get work in the door and then I'll spend some money on marketing, which is, it's backwards because you can't get work without having some sort of marketing in place up front. So why would y'all go against what most new business owners do, which is they hoard all their cash and don't spend anything to get people through the door, but y'all did that?
Well, the first thing we did that I haven't told you about, we cold called. Like when we opened our doors, October 1984 is when we opened our doors. We started cold calling all the different property management companies and the apartment buildings themselves. Hey, Miss Resident Manager, who runs your swimming pool and how did it go? Oh, XYZ runs it and it sucks. I'm like, would you like to have an unsucky experience? And they're like, sure. How do I do that? Well, you got to call my boss. I call the boss and go, Bob Smith, Miss Jane at this apartment, XYZ, told me to call you because she said she had a bad year. And I'm just wondering if you'd entertain a good year. And they would talk to me. Sometimes they wouldn't talk to me, but sometimes they would. So it was a shit ton of cold calling at first. Now, how did we decide to spend the money? The game back then, there was no internet. There was nothing back in 1984. So you had to either beat the bushes down. Now, we both, my partner and I, came from a company. We worked about 3 years at a different company before we started our own. So we knew how the game was played because we got pushed up the ladder so fast in that other company that we were dealing with all the upper level people in all these management companies. So it's not like we quit and started from scratch. We knew people. Now we had a 2-year non-compete. We could not touch any old clients, but an old client we might have ran 5 of his pools and he runs 25 pools. So the other 20 pools are fair game. So we would just call them directly, but we knew the game we had to play. And for me, we didn't have any money, but back in 84, there were very high interest rates, like 20% on credit cards. And they would just send you, I had 5 credit cards, $10,000 limits each. And I ran every single one of them up my first year. I spent $50,000 with money I didn't have. And then we would just pay the minimum. But they wanted, hey, $1,800 for a booth at that CMA Expo at the Cap Center. Okay, here's a credit card. And, and that's how we just piecemealed it together. And, year 1, we didn't make a hell of a lot of money, but we were profitable. But year 2, It was when we had that aha moment at TGI Fridays when we each handed each other $100,000 at the end of the year. And from then on, it was off to the races. We had work, we had money, we had everything.
And one of the things that you brought up was just like, working with the property managers and essentially saying like, they would give you one pool. And if you do a good job on the one pool, they'll give you another one and then more and more and more. And I know now there's like this common theme of the clients that come to you that say, for example, hey, I'm a real estate agent. I need you to do this one project for me. And if you do a good job, I've got a ton of clients that I can refer you out to. What is the difference in your mind between the scenario of the property managers versus nowadays with, let's say, real estate agents, as far as them saying, if you do a good job now, I've got you covered?
Yeah, one is called the truth, one is called a lie. And that's the difference. When you're a property manager and you have, say, you're new, they give you 5 properties. And you remember, you're probably, whatever you are, 25, 30, 35 years old. You're running around. Your whole job is to run this property. And the biggest pain in the ass in every property is a swimming pool because they're run by teenagers. And they'd rather stay at the beach and smoke pot than come home and open the pool up that they agreed to. So they want desperately to have good quality vendors because otherwise it's a huge pain in their ass. That one-off real estate person who sucks you in and go, hey, if you give me a good deal. Now, if they come in and say, if you do a good job for me, I'll refer you, I'm all in. But if they want a good job and a discounted price, and the discounted price is based on a lie, which it is, and I used to tell those people, in the pond world, hey, I'll tell you what, the first customer you bring me, I'll pay your commission on that, or I'll give you that discount back to you. But I'm not giving it up front because they were lying to me and I knew it. But the property manager, all they wanted was somebody to make that headache at the swimming pool go away. And that's what I did. And so when they had run 5 pools, 4 of them are headaches, and the one I'm running is not a headache, guess who's running all 5 pools next year? Me. You got to be able to smell that out. So that's the biggest difference.
So essentially, like, let's just say, take it, fast forward when you did the pond, Premier Ponds and that side of things. If you had gone to a property manager, the manager said, look, we have 15 different facilities that each have a pond. If you do a good job on this first one, then we most likely will give you the contract for the rest of them. That would be a scenario that you're like good to go entertainment wise, because it's legit versus somebody that's just trying to, I don't know, strong arm you in a certain sense.
They're just trying to get something for less, something on the cheap. That's all they're trying to do. And I'm not playing that game. If you want me to work hard and you're going to reward me at the end, great. But if you're going to lie to me to get me in the door and then you're going to go away, this is nothing more than ghosting today. You go out and you have a fantastic experience with someone and they ghost you because sometimes they were using you for that event. And they had no intention of going further with you. And that's really the intent. The property manager, he had full intent. If I did a good job, oh my God, that's all he wanted was a good job. And he'd give me more pools. But the other person is just using you to get what they want. That's a win-lose situation. I only wanted a win-win situation.
Now, in both companies, the pool side and the pond side, they were both set up from a business model perspective where on the pool side, you win a contract. Would you have to like fight for the contract every year? Or was it pretty much like, as long as you do a good job, unless somebody else crazy comes in and has a much better deal, you were going to get that contract year over year over year? Or was it every year you had to fight for it?
No, almost every year you had to fight for it because there's 2 or 3 factors that went into it. First, you had to do a good job. Great. Now it's money. I mean, all these buildings, all these commercial buildings run on budgets. And so if they go out to bid to make sure to keep you honest and if it's reasonable, then you got the pool again. Okay. So money was a factor in there because there would be some, new kids on the block like I was once, and they'd come in with some cheap prices and I might run the pool for say $34,000 and the next guy wants to run it for $28,000. And my guy would come back and say, hey, what do you do with this? I'm like, you remember that nightmare that you kicked out and got me in there, well, that's what you're headed for again. So you got to decide, is that $6,000 worth these people calling you up on Sunday at noon because their pool's not open? Is that worth $6,000 for you? Because if it is, hire them. So there was that. And then the third thing that would happen is sometimes these properties change management companies. And so, the new management company might have their favorite pond guy, right? Or pool guy. So now all of a sudden I'm like a fresh kid. I got to rebid everything with them. So only if it was the same property manager, the money was good, and they weren't, and they were happy with the job I was doing, then I 90% of them I retained. 90%. In fact, we used to give bonuses out on retention. And after a few years, my guys came to me and said, Steve, this is bullshit because 2 out of 3 of these factors are out of my control. You're telling me I'm going to get a big bonus if I retain 90% of my clients. Well, if I do a great job at all of them, there's still the other 2 factors that are out of my control. So I don't think that's a good bonus program. And I said, you know what? You're right. You did your job, but because somebody, or the management company or some low bidder came in and we don't get that back and you don't get your bonus, that's not fair.
So what'd you do?
Well, I changed the structure around. So it wasn't based on just retention. It was based on, for instance, in the pool days, our people had to twice a week inspect these swimming pools and go up to the resident manager with all this checklist and have her sign that piece of paper and write a comment on it. Hey, yes, for this week, they did great. Or this week, nope, the pool opened up late 4 times, whatever. So at the end of the year, the bonus was based on the aggregate of all their reports. And they would have, if they ran 100 pools, 2 reports, that's a week, that's 1,000 reports that we just tabulated and go, okay, you know what? 90% of the people said that you did an excellent job this year. Now you get your bonus.
So let's talk about that, because like the whole idea of getting the incentives right. This is, Charlie Munger, the Les Schwabs, the Henry Fords of industry, where they're talking about if you get incentives right. I mean, like FedEx, overnight shipping, they were having issues where they weren't getting stuff out on time. So they completely flipped from paying their overnight workers hourly over to like number of packages getting out on time. And that took care of the issues. So you did this in the pool world where instead of going, look, essentially you took a lead metric, which is if you hit your numbers and do all of your stuff right, something could happen. Like, a pool could drop out because they go bankrupt, and that impacts potentially your whole bonus as a whole. And that was nothing to do with your control. And then I remember in the pond world, you always had, if people on the team upsell clients or get clients to move forward with other services, they would get a 10% commission on whatever that was. So can you talk to me a little bit about your mindset around incentives for the team? Because if you get the incentives right, that will increase the overall customer lifetime value, which is how much people are actually spending with you.
Well, basically, I just made sure that everything they got paid on was within their control. It just wasn't fair that things out of their control could remove their bonus from them. So it's exactly what you talked about, FedEx. A storm may come and nobody gets any packages out during a storm. Well, in the pool world, I would go, okay, we won't count that storm event because that's not really that's a black swan that happens every so often. And so we just try to make up incentive programs strictly. And, they had to do these inspections. Let's talk about that. They had to get them 100% of them done. Like whether they were bad reports or good reports didn't matter at that point. They just had to get them done. You can't turn in half your reports all excellent, and hide the bad reports and think you're going to get a bonus. So, did you get them done? Yes. Okay. Now, how did they come back? Did they come back bad, good, or excellent? And we pay on excellent, just like any reviews. You know how you go anywhere and the guy says, hey, when you review me, either give me a 10 or don't even answer the review. And it's the same kind of thing. So we just made sure everything was in their control. And then as a team, we had team bonuses also, and that required everybody to work together. So if there was a weak link, the whole ship would go down. If there's a hole in the boat somewhere and someone didn't plug it up, the whole ship's going down. And that's what would happen with these team bonuses. And so what would happen is the other team members would pick up the slack where someone was failing. And it revolved in who was failing all the time. But if the same person was failing consistently, well, we would find out about that or know about it because we monitored pretty much everything. Then we would have a discussion with that weak link and try to fix that because they consistently are bringing down the team bonuses. So
interesting.
It's just realistic bonuses is all I try. I wanted to give those money away. I want that person. Hey, what do you want to make? I got to make $100,000, like in Teddy's money. I got to make $100,000. Great. I'm going to pay you $75,000 in salary, and I'm going to give you very doable $25,000. But I look at myself as the owner of this company, go, what do I want? I want an easy life. I don't want anybody to feed me shit. I don't want any problems. I don't want any of this kind of stuff. So I'm going to base this 25% bonus, this last $25,000, on all the stuff that makes everything run easy. And it was all obtainable. It was very obtainable. You just had to do a good job, maybe a good plus job, but not even an excellent job all the time, but just a good plus job all the time.
So one of the things in the pond world, because the whole idea of incentives, at some point I want to, that's very tough to do. In my mind, at least, like I've tried figuring out the exact approach to do it at CGN, and we're getting closer and closer on this stuff, but it's kind of coming back to like that idea of, hey, if somebody doesn't, if somebody drops off retention wise and the person doesn't get their bonus, well, the company didn't make money, so they didn't make money. But if somebody drops off, but they hit their check marks, well, now the company doesn't make money and they're paying out extra money to the people. I'll say that's something that for me, I've had to like over time get better and better at, like just realizing that that's just kind of part of the game, is that like there are going to be times that like as a company, like it's not going exactly how you want, but the team is doing what they're supposed to be doing and there's stuff out of their control that shouldn't impact that, because then it's a huge just loss of morale right there. So that would be like a side thing that at some point I'd love to talk about. But back to like the lifetime value stuff, incentivizing your team to increase lifetime value from customers. In the pond world, you created this thing called the exploratory drain and clean, which nobody knew what it was until Premier Pond started doing this. So can you walk through, I guess, what the exploratory drain and clean is and how that all came to be?
Well, people would call me up all the time and go, I got a pond, I need it fixed up. And fixed up in my world was basically $25,000. That's really what they need to fix it up. Blow it up, fix it up. Well, you know what? Not everybody had $25,000. And it was scary over the phone. I mean, they call up three different pond guys and go, what can you do? And I'm throwing the big number out. Now, I'm also the most expensive. So I would go, instead of just me throwing out this $25,000 to you, why don't we do this? For $1,000, I'm going to send someone out there, or $900, whatever it might be. We're going to drain and clean that pond thoroughly, so you'll get a regular drain and clean, but free while they're there. I'm going to have them inspect the whole thing, and they're going to write up a report for you, and they're going to give you, so you know the condition of your skimmer, of your plants, of your motor, of your plumbing, of whatever. And that way you can make an informed decision. And so I would send the guys out there, and what would happen is, instead of me, who they didn't know, trying to sell them a $25,000 pond over the phone, now all of a sudden they watch some guy or two guys spend 4 hours delicately cleaning their pond out, and they start bonding and they start talking, and my guys would talk to them about the condition of everything. What do you like? What don't you like? So now they have two people in their pond, drained and clean, looking beautiful, who they know, like, and trust. Then my guys, or I would show up in the early days, but after a while, I trained them how to just speak and sell. And so now they're going, okay, well, if you do this, it's $5,000. If you do this, it's 10. If you do the whole thing, it's the 25 Steve was talking about on the phone. So what do you think you want to do? And that's how we got in the door. And almost everybody goes, well, let's do some upgrades. Maybe the 5,000, maybe the 10,000. I don't want to do the 25,000. And a lot of times they would go, you know what? You're right. I see it all now. Let's go in there and do it. And nobody else was doing that. Everybody was, including me at first, because this was like year 3. I was in the 3rd year before I started this whole drain and clean maintenance business, all of it, which turned everything. You're talking about lifetime customer value. If you can turn it into reoccurring maintenance year after year, I mean, we clean these ponds in the spring, in the fall, in the summer, winter check. I mean, we just turn this lifetime customer. We turn them in from just a one-time $25,000 to $3,000 a year for the next 20 years. What is that? $60,000. That's 60 grand coming in, easy money. Literally, at that point, once they know, like, and trust you, you just send them paperwork and they send you money back. It sounds like an infomercial, but that's what we're doing. We're mailing out 500 contracts a year. And you know what? 300 come back with no questions asked, prepaid in full. You know, every March, we'd have like $150,000 in the bank. We hadn't done a lick of work because I sent out the paperwork and said, hey, if you want the whole year, we'll do it all. And if you prepay it all, you can pay it along the way, credit cards, whatever you want. But if you pay it all up front, 10% off. So, $3,000, that's $300 off. And that's worth it because they already know me. They said, shit, I'm going to do that service anyways. I might as well get 10% off. And they would just send me money.
So to give everybody a quick backstory, if they don't know what you're talking about, on the maintenance side, you would go out 4 times a year, clean their pond, and as part of that, you would send out at the beginning of the year a prepaid contract that was specific to each person's pond because you had a whole, this was before CRMs were a thing, but you had a whole Excel spreadsheet essentially, and it just had everybody's name, address, and prices for what it costs to do their pond. Those would then get printed out on contracts, which would then go out. And this is a big part that I think a lot of people who have tried something like this miss. You would send it out with a contract with a prepaid envelope inside of the envelope that you're sending out. And I remember
with a stamp on it.
And I remember because we had a client that does irrigation, and irrigation is the same maintenance and installation setup. That he was like, yeah, I tried something like that before. And what it was he would send out a postcard to everybody and said, hey, if you want us to come out, we can do it. Just give us a call. And he got a couple people to do that. And the very next year, I showed him all of the stuff that you did, and he created his own. And I think he got like 40 people that next year doing it. And he even had like a checkbox that said, hey, are we okay to do an extra $250 worth of work without having to call you, and anything above that will call you? And a bunch of people checked that off. So essentially he was sending it out, making it easy because he had a prepaid envelope that people could just sign up right there. And then as Premier Ponds evolved and technology got better, I remember we flipped it over to DocuSign. So people would just get a DocuSign of it in their email. So it was even easier, but it was all done in such a way that all people had to do was get their contract, check off yes or no, do they want it, send it back with, at that point, a check or fill out their credit card information. And it made it super simple. And in your mind, let's say that first exploratory drain and clean, that somebody calls you up, they don't know who you are, it's $900 to do it, without knowing that you can then sell a bunch of work later on. If you could only do the $900 from a marketing perspective, how much would you spend to acquire that lead in your mind?
Well, I think by the end I was probably spending $400 or $500. I mean, I did this analysis one time, but it was a lot.
So now
$300, $400, $500 just to get that one lead.
So if you could only make $900 off of that person for their whole lifetime, what would the max amount be that you'd be willing to spend?
$900.
So but then
I would spend it all to give me a shot.
But
yes, I would spend if their maximum lifetime was going to be only that $900, I would spend it all just to get my foot.
But then they wouldn't ever spend with you again.
Easy.
Do you?
Yeah, then and I broke even. I didn't lose any money. In fact, I lost money because I spent $900 to get them, and then I had to send the crew out to clean their pond. So I probably lost $500.
Right, which is not a good tactic. So what I'm asking
no, it's not a good tactic, but
let me clarify the question real fast. So what I'm saying is, if they could only ever spend $900 with you, there was no opportunity for anything afterwards, what would you be willing to spend to get them in the door?
Nothing. I wouldn't want them.
Okay. Then now knowing what you knew, let's say a lot of clients come in, they end up over a 20-year time period, 60 grand. What would you spend to get them in the door? If you knew, hey, this person's going to spend 60 grand with you over the next 20 years.
Well, I like to do everything at a 50% profit margin. So I want to make sure I walk away with 50% of all that. So I want to walk away over a 20-year period with the $30,000. That's what I want to do. And I would acquire them 20 years before, and I didn't have to spend another penny to keep them. That's the greatest thing about this lifetime thing. It's a pain in the ass to get a new customer. That's a lot of energy. It's a lot of shit. You got to go sell. You got to go tap dance, right? But all you got to do is treat your current person nice, and they come back year after year for free. That is a huge part of it, of treating them correctly, doing the right stuff. But the other side of this is this is, again, before CRMs were a thing, you had this whole, I think you called it chits. Was that what it was? Is that what they were called? Yeah.
What are those?
Chits, yeah. I got that I used to work at the Country Club of Virginia from 14 to 18 as a pool boy, a cleanup boy, and a lifeguard. And they would just call them chits. And I was also in college a diving pro at a country club. And I could go to any country club and sit down any restaurant and order food because I was reciprocating pro at another country club. And they would come up with a chit. And it's just a little cardboard piece of paper that's saying, I got lunch at Congressional Country Club, Steve, diving pro, Columbia Country Club, and give them that chit. Well, also, when I taught private lessons, that they would come up with this little cardboard and say, I'm teaching Susie private diving lessons for $60 an hour. And she would, or the mom would have to sign her name. It's chit. The chits get turned in. The country club office bills the person the right amount of money, and that's the system. So when it came to the pond company, I would give a chit, which is just nothing more than a blank informational card, like customer's name, size of pond, are we cleaning it? And then on this chit was other things for the boys in the field to fill out. I clean the pond. It's like a checklist, but I clean the pond. Okay, what other seeds did you plant? Well, a seed is a future work. Like you plant a seed to grow a tree in the future. Well, you would go up and go, hey, how about that patio that we were talking about, that patio when we built the pond 3 years ago? Are you ready for that patio yet? Not this year, but next year. And then next year, hey, what about that patio? Well, on the chit, might even be pre-filled out. Hey, talk about the patio. They're wanting a patio for 3 years now. And then, so we plant the seeds. And also, what did you upsell on this chit? What did you upsell? Nothing. Yes, $500 worth of stuff or whatever it might be. It was just information. And so I would give the boys the contract to clean the pond and this chit. And with that, they would give me back the contract, the chit, and the money they collected. They had to come back and collect the money, either credit card bill, which they had readers now at the end, but otherwise they just bring checks back. And so every day I'd meet these boys and I'd give them, okay, here's your ponds, your 6 ponds you're going to do today. Give me the chits from the 6 ponds. It was a way to transfer information in a handwritten style. This was before Jobber and all that stuff. So that's what a chit is. And a chit made me
one of the
millions.
things to kind of put this all full circle is you would understand what somebody on the team, and this is all still lifetime value, but somebody that you hire, what they want to make, and then you give them a set incentive structure, which at the pond company was 10% of whatever they upsell. And then instead of just going, whatever you upsell, just you figure it out, you let me know what that is, and I'll add it to your paycheck. This was, you are actually then setting them up where you are giving them essentially like a cue card that's, they know what to bring up to the customer. They have to fill it out. Then they have to bring it back. So I'm guessing if they upsell nothing, they have to put a 0 on it. So either way, it's still data. It's not like you're manipulating them, but essentially it's like, if you think like when you're describing all that to me, I think back to like almost like the scene in Wolf of Wall Street. And I know that this was like a negative thing, but it was like, hey, I wrote you guys a script. When you start calling people, this is going to be your ammunition to actually get people to buy stuff from you. This was kind of your ammunition. And all you did was just give them a form to fill out. And it just told them everything they needed to know with the client. And if they came back with more seeds, they write them down. And then just year over year over year, you would just keep bringing up that one project. And then that's how these construction projects from past customers would then end up moving forward.
So I would hand them softballs. When someone goes, wow, that was easy, or your comeback was great, you just handed me a softball because it's easy to hit. And that's what I was giving them. I was giving them a very easy way for them to go out and make more money. Not just do the job they're getting paid to do, but come back with 10% commission. And it was easy for them to do that. And these guys, 2 of them were doing $250,000 a year. Mike and Andrew did $500,000 between the 2 of them.
And talk about the whiteboard, because the whiteboard in the workshop, I remember that. Talk about that thing.
Well, that's just a very low-tech way, which is everything I do almost is low-tech, of just tracking the company. So for instance, and we did this in the swimming pool world too, we had these massive walls, but in the pond world, I only had like 4 employees, so I didn't have a massive wall, but I would have, 4 guys' names, how many ponds they cleaned, and they would pre-fill it in. Oh, cleaned 3 ponds today, and they would keep the total. Upsells for the day. Oh, I sold $200 today, and they keep their totals. And so it was a live and running update that these employees filled in themselves. And what that would do is everybody could see how everybody else was doing. And if someone's kicking ass, like, holy shit, you sold $250,000 and I only sold 48. I remember the first year I had Andrew, that was the exact numbers. Mike sold like 250 and Andrew sold $48,000. Now I didn't have to say anything to Andrew because he could look at the board and go, oh my God, Mike is outselling me 5-1. And all I did, I brought them up together. I remember this, and it changed everything because Andrew went from 48 to like 200 the very next year. I'm like, Andrew, I know you see these numbers. So here's what I have to say about that. Mike, could you just share with Andrew what the hell it is you're doing for you to sell 250? And I just walked away and I let them talk it out. And the next year, Andrew did 200,000. And Mike was going in his answer, because I heard what he said. He says, I just ask everybody all the time, hey, what about that patio? See, Andrew would go in there and go, they don't want the patio. I've asked them 3 years in a row. I'm not going to waste my time. Well, Mike would ask 4 years in a row. And guess what? They were ready in the 4th year because Mike did not show up with a crystal ball thinking he knew all the answers. He showed up as Columbo dumb. Well, Mrs. Smith, what about that patio? Ha, ha, ha. Well, it's interesting, Mike. I've been thinking about that, and this is the year. Oh, great. And that's how we did it.
Now that we've, with Audrey and I, we've remodeled or added a bathroom upstairs, it looks great. But now the rest of the house looks a little bit like it's dated compared to that upstairs bathroom. So, I know in the pond world, it's a little bit different because you have this ongoing recurring setup where you're able to keep getting in the person's world. But, from our side of things, it's like we just remodeled one bathroom. It's probably only a matter of time until another one, is timed for us to remodel that or add something else. So it's almost like, we just repainted the outside of our house. We're updating, the whole front walkway and all that stuff. So we're doing a ton of projects, and it's almost like once that first domino fell, it's just game on. But the big thing here is just, and we have another client that does this where on the remodeling side, he's like, Logan, at the end of every project, people just add like $30,000 worth of work. Just saying, hey, while you're here, could you replace all the windows? Could you just redo this? And it's like just different stuff that people just go, hey, you're doing a good job. While you're here, I kind of been wanting to knock this out anyway. How would that look? And I did this with my painting company here where we painted the outside of our house. And then little by little, I'm like, hey, can we redo this? Can we repaint that? Hey, what would it cost to do our fireplace? And it's just like, it just starts and it just snowballs from there. But it's all like getting the foot in the door up front and then making sure that I guess the environment is set up in a way that you can keep bringing it up and just softly asking, hey, we did your bathroom. When do you want to talk about that next bathroom? Because I know you brought up that it was no longer, the nicest bathroom in the house.
It's funny. You're looking at my background, and this is a new house I just bought, and I painted everything. And once I painted it, it looked really great. But all of my plates, the electrical plates and all the switches were that kind of tan, and it looked like shit. So if you look now, they're all white. And the guy comes, I said, look, I want all these to be white. He goes, do you want them to light up at nighttime? So when you walk down the hall, and I'm like, of course I do. And it was exactly that. So in addition to painting my house, I think I paid about 15 grand to paint the house. I paid an electrician the same goddamn money to go in there and okay, fix all this. Well, what about the chandeliers? What about this light? I'm like, make it all go away. It's never ending. And that's exactly what happens. People get excited. You show them quality, and everything else in their homes is not the same quality. So they want to upgrade it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. But you have to have people. You have to have employees. You have to train these people to know how to talk to people, to know how to make them feel good about their decisions. And you just can't send in any laborer to do this. They have to have particular skills to do it.
I guess last thing on customer lifetime value, when it came to, let's say, Premier Ponds, of the total revenue, what percentage of the revenue each year typically came from past and current clients?
Well, let me just answer it like this. So we were doing, a couple of years before I sold that company, we were doing 1.5 million a year. 500,000 of that was just coming in from contracts, just reoccurring maintenance. So a third of it was just, I send out paper, they send me money back. A third of it, another 500,000, I would have to sell, work my ass off, do the whole sales stuff, the marketing stuff, and all that shit. But a third of it was the boys in the field already with existing customers, bringing back upsells. Renovate this, fix that, add some new plants. Want new fish? How about the upgraded lights? They're all LED now. So it was exciting. So basically, it was a third, a third, a third. A third I had to work hard for. And I didn't like that part because I had to bust my ass. But the other ones, the sending out paper, getting money, Jesus Christ, a monkey could do that. And the other one about having the boys upsell, two things. One, I didn't have to do that. So a third of my money, I didn't have to do. And so a third of any work I don't have to do in that book that I read that you gave me, that's 100% awesome, right? that I get to do that. And not only that, that third, that 500,000 that they're selling, 50,000 of it was going back to them in commissions. So this was a win-win-win-win-win situation. And it would just make for a happy environment. They all in the same boat. They see the vision, which is my vision, which is our vision. It's our company. They don't look at it like they're making Steve rich. They look at it like this is A, an awesome job, and B, I have unlimited potential to make as much money as I want. In fact, if you went to Mike and Andrew 10 years ago, which is 7 years or 6 years before they bought the company, they said, what is Steve's goal for you? They would both, without saying, Steve is going to make me a millionaire. And I did.
Love it. So any final parting words that you want to speak on when it comes to the whole idea of customer lifetime value?
I do. Yeah, I just want to tell you, I have all these notes, but I really want to tell you about my very first customer. My first one, I wasn't even in the pond business yet. It was 6 years after I built the swimming pool thing. sold the swimming pool thing. And a buddy of mine that stayed with that swimming pool company started to build ponds for them on the side. We were friends, so he kept coming over, and Mr. Clark, and he said, "Steve, you got to do this pond thing." So one day, 6 years later, I said, "You know what? I'll try this. The next pond you build, I'll build it for you. You just put me in the yard, give me this stuff, and tell me what to do." And we did that. And I built that first pond for this woman. Her name was Robin Collins. And it was a beautiful little pond in the backyard. So after that, then I took over. I started my own company. That's actually, I rode home. I finished it the day after the World Trade Centers got knocked down by the airplanes. I came home, and that's when you and your siblings and I came up with a name and printed all those cards up. Well, I got to clean her pond every year. Well, what happened 3 years later? She sells that home. So what does she do? She moves to a new home. She calls me up, says, "Steve, you're the guy. I want a pond. I want a big pond." So now I get to go buy a big pond for her, okay? Big ass pond, and do another 20 years worth of maintenance on her pond. Well, what happens to the pond that the house she sold? Well, the lady moves in with little kids, and she goes, "Oh my God, my kids are going to drown." So I go up there and said, "You know what? It's got a beautiful little stream. Oh, I love the stream, but I hate the pond." I'm like, "Why don't we just fill the pond in and make it a pondless? So there's no water at the end. It's just a stream that disappears into a dry gravel of rock." So now all of a sudden, I got more work from that lady and maintenance from that lady. Well, 6 years later, the other lady, Robin, who bought the big pond and the new house, she says, "Steve, this is awesome. How do we make it better?" I'm like, "Well, long story short, we could throw another 21,000 and add another filter, some more lights, some more." Fuck yeah, let's do that. So this woman, I don't know what she paid me over a lifetime, but she paid me probably $200,000. Probably $200,000 over 20 years. And that doesn't include the other lady who paid me another 50 grand over X amount of years to convert her pond into pondless and do her maintenance too. And all I'm saying is that one thing, besides making me a lot of money, it showed me what is possible. Oh my God, all I got to do is take care of the people already in my fold, already in my reach. And if I take care of them, then when I go out and make new customers, I get to add them. Because I'm not subtracting my existing customers, I am adding to it. And before you know that, Val, you could turn around and sell your company and go, "You know what? When you buy this company from me, a third of the money's automatic. A third of the money's simple because my guys are doing all the selling. And a third of the money, you're going to have to do a little work for it. But you get 2/3 of the company and all the money from the company in the most beautiful, easy way possible." I told you, I set all my businesses up to run without me as easily as they could. Because I didn't want to kill myself. I killed myself in the first business. So don't underestimate every single person that you have. Treat them nice. Treat them like you would want to be treated. That's all you really got to do. And if you do that, and you're any good at what you do, you will die a millionaire. Guaranteed.
Cool. I love it. All right. I think that's a good way to end all this. Dad, I appreciate you jumping on and talking about all this. I think that last story really just puts a nice bow into everything.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad to do it. I'm extra glad to do it with you because I'm super proud of you.
Cool. I love you too. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. So I loved that conversation I just had. I would say that for me, the biggest takeaway from the conversation was the idea of incentivizing the team to help increase that customer lifetime value, where it's really a win-win-win between the team member, you as the business owner, but then also the client, where everybody is coming out on the other side much happier. And that is the easy way to grow lifetime value for your client. So my suggestion here is if you have somebody on your team or people on your team that interact with clients on a daily basis, send this podcast over to them so they can listen to that part, especially to show really what they can be listening for when it comes to clients, then that way they can bring it back. And now the next time they go out and interact with that client, they're in a very strong position to be able to get that client to move forward with whatever it is they brought up. And now it's that win, win, win.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Contractor Growth Network. This episode of the Contractor Growth Network podcast is hosted by Logan Shinholser and was produced by Dane Appleyard and Logan Shinholser. Today's guest was Steve Shinholser, founder of Premier Ponds. If you have any questions from today's episode, please reach out to the podcast at info@contractorgrowthnetwork.com. We look forward to seeing you next time when we talk about marketing tactics to implement on your next job with Sean Holleran.